So the first thing we're going to kick things off with is Al Green. He has said that he's presenting articles of impeachment against Donald Trump in the next 30 days, to which I say, hallelujah. And we're going to get into that. And then we're going to be talking more about Trump because I am what we call a recovering Catholic and grew up Catholic. And, the Pope has died. The conclave, they're going to be discussing who the next pope is going to be. Trump was asked this recently on Fox News, and he, of course, said it should be me because obviously he wants that job, Desmond. And Lindsey Graham thinks that's a great idea and talked about that on Twitter. So we're going to discuss that. Then after we sort of take the ick off of ourselves around that conversation, I just saw this, and I'm really looking forward to thinking about how your thoughts are around this. The Texas House is passing a bill targeting political fake ads. But the idea of this, Desmond, is you'll be able to potentially go to jail for a year if your political meme, for instance, online doesn't have an official government seal. And so even conservatives in Texas are pushing back on that, which is really wild when the conservatives push back. And then after that, we're going to be talking about the U.S. Senate panel is amending a bill to state that criticism of the Israeli government is not considered anti-Semitism. And Bernie Sanders has been leading the charge. So we got a lot to talk about. If there is time, we might even be chatting a little bit more about John Fetterman and what's been going on with him, because he's a big deal here as a senator in Pennsylvania, and he's been in the news again. So I'm just tired from that preview.
Right, and you forgot about the Meta AI problem.
Thank you. Yes, so, and I wouldn't want to forget that because that's an important one.
Right.
Meta is now talking about across Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, they're racing to popularize a new class of AI-powered digital companions, romantic companions, that Mark Zuckerberg believes will be the future of social media. But the problem is these romantic AI bots are talking to children. WSJ, the Wall Street Journal, investigated this, and they're using celebrity voices. And Meta said that they wouldn't use celebs in that way. So we're going to dig into that a little bit too.
So
that's a wild one.
What are we going to start with?
Okay, I think we should kick things off with Al Green because this is really important what's going on. I think a lot of people have pushed back against the Democrats, and rightfully so, for the last several months, saying they're not doing enough, they're not being loud enough. I do think some of them are starting to make a mark, but do you want to share a little bit about what you've been reading and hearing around Al Green and articles of impeachment being brought?
Right, so this came across the wire a few days ago, and I made sure to post it on here on Substack. So I posted a note, got quite a few people liking it, restacking it. So kind of just read a couple little sentences here from what Al Green said. So he said that I will not allow the twice-impeached 34-time convicted felon, full-time Don the con man, and tinhorn de facto dictator to destroy American democracy, excuse me.
Yeah.
Impeachment is the constitutionally accorded remedy for the tinhorn dictator, and I'm coming for you, Mr. President. The world will know why you should be impeached when I present my articles of impeachment on the floor of the House of Representatives. And as you were saying earlier, he plans on doing so within this month.
Yeah.
So people keep talking about impeachment. This is, this is like the second time now that we're here to talk about people bringing articles of impeachment to the floor directly, not just like saying I might do this, but saying I'm definitely going to do this. Another congressman did this up in Michigan, I think just earlier last week. I do forget his name. I think he's out of the Detroit area. But yeah, we have been asking for Democrats to do more. That takes a variety of different ways that you can go about, quote unquote, doing more. But yes, people have been asking, why isn't the president being impeached right now? And so, there is a logical reason for that. Specifically, the articles, will only be brought to the floor of the Speaker of the House allows them to be. We know that is in Republican control right now. But, the thing that I've been arguing about, Natalie, is that even though you can't actually impeach the president because the Democrats do not have control over the House, I still think it is important to bring articles of impeachment to the floor for the very reason that I think if you are not talking about impeachment, then you are essentially saying that the actions of the president currently right now are not worthy of impeachment. So I think the Democrats, I think it's important for history's sake. I think it's important just to be signaling to the base that no, we do not condone this. No, we are not okay with this. Yes, what he is doing right now is worthy of impeachment. And so, yes,
Yeah.
I do think that it's very important for, representatives like Al Green to be bringing articles of impeachment to the floor. And I'm happy that he's doing so.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us, I'm Natalie Bencivenga. This is Desmond Price of Independent Thought. Please check out our Substacks and subscribe to us. And to your point, this person playing devil's advocate, maybe not, A-Chip says he doesn't have and won't have them. So what is this going to accomplish? And I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head with what you said, because this has been my frustration, is people on the one hand are demanding action from the Democrats. We can't
Right.
do a lot, right? And the people that are then standing up and going on an anti-oligarchy tour, or bringing articles of impeachment, or going on Fox News and bashing the Republicans, all the things that they can do, it's you're not doing enough. What do you want them to do? And in this moment, I think the best thing we can do is be speaking every single day about how this isn't normal. We're not normalizing this. This is wrong. And bringing articles of impeachment to the forefront is yet another way of saying we are standing up for what is right, even if it can't go anywhere in this moment, to show that we have this level of momentum of interest in saying we would do this if we had the votes, could then trigger people to be like, okay, well, when midterms come up, how many votes do we really need to get the Democrats back in power to actually make these things happen and go across the finish line? Because these numbers aren't that far away. Like, it's a tight situation here. So all we need to do is flip a few places. And so this idea of like, well, we can't do anything, so we shouldn't do anything, energy, I'm not here for it. I'm not here
No.
for it. And, to your point, I was reading this article from The Hill, and Al Green also said, we need a Senate that will convict him this time. And I want you to know from my heart, I understand that he is a Goliath. He has control of the generals and the military. He has control of the Justice Department. He has control of the Republican Party. But my friends, for every Goliath, there is a David. And I want you to know this David is going to bring articles of impeachment. I'm coming for you. And he says a lot more. And that, to me, is the rallying cry that we need. That is why these protests that I've been attending and reporting on, that is why the anti-oligarchy tour, all of it is so important, because it's not about whether or not we can physically remove him yet. It's, can we garner the will to do so? And all of this, to me, feeds into that momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last thing that I want to see right now is Democrats, because this is essentially what we were, killing them for early in this administration in the first month, being like, oh, well, we don't have legislative power. We can't actually order investigations of the president. We can't actually stop anything that he's doing. So let's just sit back and just kind of like do, just let him do whatever he wants. And then we will keep, just pointing it out in the media. That is essentially Chuck Schumer's playbook, the one that we've all been asking him to step down over, right?
Right.
So no, will impeaching Donald Trump actually remove him from office in this current session? No, it will not. No, it will not. But the question then becomes, is doing this act still an important thing? And I think that the answer is unequivocally yes. I do think it is. Even though it won't have the outcome that we all want, I do think that applying consistent pressure, putting people on the record, and essentially signaling to the American people that we think that what he's doing right now are crimes worth removal of office. I think that is an important thing to continuously be saying over and over and over again. And so, yes, I am happy that Al Green's doing this, and I hope that more people start doing this, because at the end of the day, Donald Trump isn't just doing one illegal act. There are numerous illegal acts happening in this administration right now, and I think they have to be continually put on blast for that.
We've impeached him for a lot less. And so I think it makes total sense to continue this energy forward. And this person from American Citizen said, what are we going to do to force the Supreme Court judges to uphold their oath of office, to uphold the Constitution, Amendment 14, all men are equal, and make them reverse presidential immunity or fire the judges? I mean, I think this, once again, is a situation that has been brought on. and I hate to say it, but it's like I think the Democrats have really been asleep at the wheel for many, many cycles now. Like we could have solidified Roe v. Wade into our Constitution. We could have done a lot of things to strengthen the Voting Rights Act. We could have overturned Citizens United. There were multiple opportunities. And now we're in a position that I think a lot of them never thought we would be in. And they kept using these issues and dangling them in front of their constituents time and time again. And now they're not going to be able to do that anymore. And like Tim Walz said recently, you know, we're not going to get voted in until we actually say we're going to give everybody universal health care and follow through on it. Like the times of Democrats sort of resting on their laurels and using these human rights issues as carrots to vote for them, it ain't going to work anymore. So I don't really know what the answer is with the Supreme Court at this moment, other than I'm hoping that they have surprised us on a few things and stood against Trump on a few things. And perhaps they're also starting to feel the weight of public scrutiny, and perhaps that will be enough. But they also don't have an ethics oversight committee on them. So that's another thing that needs to change. Why are they exempt from that?
I have no idea. And they shouldn't be. In an ideal world, and I would love to just continue to push for this, because I think, you know, like as we continue to have these conversations in the public, you know, that is how we apply public pressure to these politicians, by talking about these issues over and over again.
Right.
I want Supreme Court justices to have terms. And
Thank you.
I also think that this is actually not as common as a thing, so you might disagree with me on this. I think they should be nationally elected. And I do not shy away from this position whatsoever. Some people think that it would actually make the situation worse. I do not. I think we could elect judges at every level at the state level. Just did so here in my state of Montana. We elect Supreme Court justices for the state, local judges here in your local municipality. So I do not understand why we can't apply that to the Supreme Court as well. I think it would probably have better outcomes, because we would actually be having people that aren't just installed in there by the presidents. Yeah. We never know who they're going to be. So yes, I do think that maybe if some of these justices did actually have the scrutiny of having to deal with an election, that maybe they would act differently. So that's just how I feel about it.
Not only do I think you're right on that, I'm going to take it a step further. I think these cabinet members shouldn't be just appointed by the president either, because now we're really seeing the issue with that. Like, I'm sorry, RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, like these people are not fit to serve in public office at any level, let alone at this level, and be wreaking such havoc on all of our lives. And so, you know, I really think a lot of the things that I used to feel very strongly about one way, I'm kind of flipping on, because we're now seeing the limits of the understanding that the person in office has to be willing to uphold the Constitution. And this man is not. So his choices within cabinet members, picking them and picking the Supreme Court, he's not adhering to sort of this unspoken rule of decency. And so here we are. And speaking of decency, this man that we're talking about, President Trump, not only thinks he's the best president ever, but he also thinks he should become Pope. Did you hear this?
It's been hard to escape it, if we're being honest. You know, I don't know about you, but like that picture has been everywhere.
Oh.
And I haven't been able to go anywhere without seeing this picture up in itself, which it's totally on brand, but I'll save it here for a second. Please go ahead and introduce it.
No, I listen. Trump jokingly said, this was from Politico, but it was everywhere earlier this week, that he would be his own number one choice to be the next leader of the Catholic Church. He said, I'd like to be Pope. And of course, he was half joking. And even I noticed that it seemed like a joke. And that he also then said that the guy from New York would make a great choice. But the scary part is that Lindsey Graham then sort of ran with this and talked about it more on Twitter and said, I was excited to hear that President Trump's open to the idea of being the next pope. This would truly be a dark horse candidate, but I would ask the papal conclave and the Catholic faithful to keep an open mind about that possibility. And then from there, it got weirder, to your point, and Trump put out an AI-generated image of himself dressed as the Pope, which the White House then amplified on social media. And this is where a lot of Catholics are now starting to really have an issue, because their Pope, the head of their church, just passed, and he was very beloved. He was more progressive. People really loved him. And the fact that he died, whether you're Catholic or not, or whatever, however you feel about the Catholic Church, this is a figure that means something to these people. And the fact that he passed, and so quickly the White House is pretty much parodying it by posting an image of Trump is so disgraceful. And can you imagine if Joe Biden did this? That's what I kept thinking. Or Barack Obama.
I can, because the fake outrage machine, would be in full swing right now. But no, this is who Donald Trump is. And you know what? I think to a degree, he likes to throw these things out there for the sake of distracting you from terrible tariff policies, which are crashing the economy, or all the different things that he's doing, trying to disappear people off the streets. And so it's a great distraction from everything else that is going on. But it's also just very on brand for Trump, right? This is a person who actually reposted a video of him forcibly, essentially building casinos and hotels, sitting in front of a pool next to Benjamin Netanyahu with a giant statue of himself made out of gold in a forcibly displaced Gaza. This is who Donald Trump is.
Yeah.
This is exactly who he is. He wants people to worship him like a king. He wants people to worship him and all of his greatness. He talks about how he's the greatest president ever. He is a full-blown, sociopathic narcissist.
Yeah, he's a megalomaniac.
And so this is completely on brand for Donald Trump. And it honestly, I think it's sick, truthfully speaking. The Catholic Church came out and already condemned him for this. So, and I'm glad that they did, because I think too many people are scared of Trump right now. And I think that fever has to break a little bit.
I agree. And I didn't mean to be distracted, but we have so many people commenting on what we're discussing here. And I can't read all of them, but the idea that people are really angry about, it seems, is can governors from these Democratic states, can they bring in the U.S. Marshal and start arresting people on the courts, and what can we do? I mean, there is this sense of let's go after the people around Trump and try to remove them or get them in, after something that they're doing that's illegal. And so there's a lot of frustration. Oh my gosh, we have a lot of comments. There is a lot of frustration happening because people are really still very much feeling like we feel helpless, we feel hopeless, and there's this sense of desperation. And to me, I think that is exactly what he's hoping for. Back to your point about his MO is to sow chaos, to breed suspicion and fear, and create this sort of upside down world where, none of this was happening 3 months ago. And now here we are, with our markets in the free fall, with people losing their jobs. I know a lot of people that have lost their jobs because of all these DOGE cuts. There's real life implications. We may not have a flu vaccine come this fall. We may not have another COVID vaccine come this fall because of what's happening with RFK and our medications, all of these things. But what I want to remind people is that speaking up does work, because there have been victories over the past few weeks that have happened in the courts. And it was because people haven't let these things drop. And even with this idea of the autism registry that RFK wanted to put into play, which really was phase one of a eugenics program, in my opinion, a very thinly veiled program. To me, the fact that there was so much uproar in the public spaces, in spaces like this, in press, they've now rescinded that. They've taken that back. So I know it feels like we don't have a lot of power, but we do. And we also have the power to boycott companies and products that are also...
Boycotts work.
Hell yes, they work.
Boycotts
and so
work.
I don't want us to fall into this pit of despair, basically.
No, absolutely not. I mean, one, Target, they're losing money left, right, sideways. I posted about that on my notes just a couple days ago. Absolutely being crushed right now by boycotts.
Yes.
Have you seen Elon Musk recently?
Not as much.
Because I haven't.
And I have to tell you, it's been great.
I haven't. And that is a direct result of public pressure.
That's right.
He is actually shunned right now. You can't find him on social media. You can't find him anywhere right now.
Yeah.
He actually has felt the heat of those Tesla protests. He really has. And so I do believe that as people continue to speak up, as they concentrate their areas of where they're boycotting, who they're speaking out against, yes,
Yep.
these have impacts. AOC talked about this particularly, how when she was on the oligarchy tour a few weeks ago, she stopped here where I live at in Missoula, Montana. She talked about how that day that she showed up to that rally, that she was hearing from colleagues back at the Capitol that Republicans in certain districts, because they were kind of like more close district, more swing districts, they were considering now how they could not vote for this upcoming CR bill because of the backlash from the potential Medicaid cuts.
See?
So there are, direct results of people speaking out. So yes, it does feel like it's not the immediate thing. You want to be able to be like, what can we do right now to get Trump out of office, or what can we do right now to get this person arrested? Unfortunately, there isn't really a button that we can push right now for that, but our continuous outrage, our continuous speaking out, us calling these people, us showing up to these places, demonstrating, being in community, being involved in organizations, boycotting certain places, yes, they all do have an impact. They very much do.
That's right. And calling your representatives, they are freaking out because the phone lines have been smashed, at least over here in Pennsylvania. I keep hearing this from my elected officials that, yes, they are hearing it. They are getting it. They're getting the message. That puts pressure on them, too. So continue to find out who your representatives are and call them. Leave them voicemails, write them emails, write them snail mails, whatever form of communication is most comfortable to you, because it's all making an impact. So I do think that this, while in individual moments doesn't seem like a lot, it is adding up to actual tangible things that we can look at and say that's been a victory. So if you're just joining us, I'm Natalie Bencivenga, and this is Desmond Price of Independent Thought. Please check out our Substacks and subscribe to us. We're breaking down the wildest stories of the week. And I want to continue this thread, Desmond, around...
Hold on really quickly.
Sure.
Everyone, if you would like to subscribe right now, you just click at the top of the screen on the top left or the top right side. I do apologize. But if you click right there, you can hit it right there and you can subscribe to both of our accounts right now.
Do that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Natalie. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate it. So I want to stick with this thread, though, about what's working.
Right.
Because there's been a lot going on with bills, and there's so many. It's really hard to keep track of what is actually happening. But this article just came to be very recently on May 1st. U.S. Senate panel amends bill to state that criticism of Israeli government is not anti-Semitism. And the Republican chair of committee charges that amendment led by Bernie Sanders, which passes 12-11 with the help of GOP's Rand Paul. So you never know where your unlikely bedfellow is going to come from. It's an effort to kill the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. This, I was really surprised that it tipped the scale in this way and was, in essence, a win for free speech. But please, I welcome your thoughts on this.
So first of all, I believe that there are so many different layers to this conversation, but I will just say really just like definitively with this, it's a really dangerous territory to try to conflate that.
Yes.
Condemning the actions of a government are the same as hate speech against a particular ethnic group.
100%.
And it makes no sense to me that language was ever in a bill in the first place. I mean, what is trying to be created here? And the funny thing to me is that this was a 12-11 votes, which means that it almost stayed in, right? I mean, the idea behind this is actually on party lines. So the only person who flipped was Rand Paul. So the Republicans, in large part, are trying to create this idea that if you speak out against what is happening with Netanyahu's government, whatever the government is doing, that is the exact same thing as anti-Semitism. That is absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane. Could you imagine if someone said that, like, if you were speaking out against Trump, for instance, and his government, that'd be the same as like committing a hate crime or something to that effect, right? Like you would just lose your mind. You're like, no, you are criminalizing dissent against a government.
Yes.
That is a direct infringement on free speech. I don't even understand how that could be legal, first of all. So I am very glad that
we don't care about that anymore. No.
Yes, apparently we're in new territory.
Please.
This is full-blown fascism. So as I'm sitting here trying to like grapple with how this even existed in the first place, I am very happy to see that it's not going to exist. But the problem here is that so many of these members wanted it to be in this bill. Tells me that we're not safe from it maybe existing again in some form in the future. And so that's what really is concerning to me as we are seeing so many different attempts around the country. Because it's not just in this. We're also seeing that certain nonprofits have kind of been told that if they have certain stances that they will lose their funding. Schools are being told that demonstrations are happening on their campuses that they could lose their funding. So we are seeing so many different ways that which criticizing a particular government is Israel's government, just point blank right here, that is just not going to be okay, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it sounds like. And it's very dangerous territory. It's incredibly dangerous territory. I know a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about this, about whether, how they feel about the nation of Israel, how they feel about the people of Palestine. I got to tell you, just taking all of those things aside, as American people, if we are told that we cannot criticize another nation's government for whatever actions they are committing, that is a direct infringement on free speech. And anybody who's trying to make sure that that is a reality in our country, as far as I'm concerned, they should not be in elected office.
Yeah. And
any way, shape, or form.
It's also indirectly going to impact your freedom to assemble as well. It's
Yeah.
also going to impact freedom of the press, because if you can't report on that, if you can't talk to someone with an opposing opinion on something like what is going on in Gaza, then you no longer have a free press. You have a mouthpiece for one particular government. And once again, it very much solidifies this experience of authoritarianism in the United States. And Bernie said, and this is from the Times of Israel, this article that I'm reading.
Right.
Bernie said, one can criticize the government of Israel for their policies without being anti-Semitic. He said this amendment makes it clear that it is not anti-Semitic to oppose the Netanyahu-led war effort that has killed more than 50,000 people and wounded over 116,000, 60% whom are women, children, and the elderly. And we have a comment here from Gregory Bally. He says, Netanyahu regime can't possibly represent all Jews, just as Trump regime doesn't ever represent all Americans. GOP is craven and authoritarian. And 100% agree. I think Desmond, sometimes I think the trap that we fall into, you and I, is I still think we think that the government is supposed to work for the people. And this government that we have, that is not what they're doing. And they're actually not pretending to do that. And they've been very clear about their goals. And that's why we didn't vote for this. So the fact that half the country, a little less than half, did vote for it, and Trump managed to win because of the electoral map yet again, it really does tell you we've been sliding in this direction for a really long time, but the process of this has been expedited because of what has happened in Gaza. And I just want to remind everybody that regardless of your religious affiliation, how you feel about the geopolitical experiences over there is nothing wrong with saying two things can be true. You can say what happened that day was wrong, and you can also say what has happened since to those people of Gaza is also wrong. I feel like a lot of times we're not allowed to speak as if both of these things aren't happening at the same time, or that both of these experiences of these people aren't both valid. And it's like, you can hold space for both and say we should not be bombing children. Like that, to me, it doesn't negate what happened that day either. And I don't think a lot of times we're allowed to speak on the nuances of that. And bills like this, to me, further create that binary experience that try to make it seem so black and white when we know it's not, in terms of how people feel about it. So there is a little bit of that too here at play, that we're somehow not allowed to talk about one person or one group of people's pain. And I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all.
I'm going to be very clear about how I feel about this, Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
I think Benjamin Netanyahu is a fascist.
Absolutely.
Even more so than Donald Trump. And that's saying something, even given everything that we've said about Donald Trump. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is actually even a more dangerous leader of his country than Donald Trump is. And so what has happened here? Because of the fact that we do allow foreign governments to have influence over our government.
So much influence.
The government of Israel has legally, mind you, lobbied members of our Congress in order to make sure that there are favorable conditions for them here in America so they can continue to have a good view of their government here in America so that they can continue to get funding and protections from our taxpayer dollars and from our military. Now, to this effect, what Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to create here in America is a situation for himself and for his government that no matter what his actions are over in his part of the world, that if anyone criticizes it here in America, they will be attacked for it. They will be condemned for it. And in some cases, they might be absolutely, they might be deported out of this country for it, as we saw with, Mahmoud Khalil. So we are seeing essentially an authoritarian crackdown at the behest of one Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes.
He is trying to impose fascism over here in an increased fashion that benefits what he's doing over there.
Absolutely.
And so for me, I cannot say strongly enough just how dangerous this is.
I agree.
He is essentially trying to infiltrate our own government and criminalize speech that is against what he's doing. Because at the end of the day, there is never anything wrong with criticizing a government.
No. Period.
I don't care where the government is. I don't care who makes up the government. I don't care, where this government is. It doesn't matter. You are allowed to criticize the government. Everyone in this country should be able to criticize the government. And I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, as far as I'm concerned, everyone needs to be criticizing his government. His own people are criticizing him. There are protests to get him out of office from his own people.
I know.
Like almost every single week over there anymore. So I mean, let's not pretend that this is actually some beloved figure who's being attacked by some radical cult. Like he deserves everything that's coming his way.
Oh, 100%. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I just think that when you try to put this stuff into writing and deny people the opportunity to express how they're feeling and stand against tyranny in all of its forms, you're not allowing space. You're not allowing emotional space for the death and destruction and the lack of humanity that this situation has caused. And then you create spaces where people hide in the shadows and aren't able to talk freely about how they're feeling. Because I think at the heart of all of this, whether it's what's happening in Gaza, whether it's what happened with the pandemic, whether it's what happened with Trump's reelection, this country in particular really sucks at dealing with collective grief. And so we wear these masks. And so we've put on these masks of anger to hide our grief because we haven't dealt with the pain, with the death, with the destruction, and how all of these things intertwine. And behind all of that grief is what is really at the heart of all of this, which is fear, and a fear of not being seen and heard in our full humanity. So bills like this, if these things were to pass, in my opinion, they only create more of that groundwork being laid where you cannot speak around grief or fear. And the only way you're allowed to react is through anger. And we have another comment from this person, Hirut, who says, my vote depends on what is fair to humanity and all human dignity and all freedom. And I think that's a really important point too, that we all deserve dignity. And when you put these kinds of rules in place where you're no longer allowed to criticize a government that is stripping people of their humanity and of their dignity and of their right to exist, what are you left with? What are you left with?
That's a great question, Natalie. I think before we transition away from this topic, I do want to say that I haven't really done this too much on here, but I wanted to give a recommendation out there for those who are interested in learning more about like the details on the ground of what's happening over there. There's a great publication here on Substack that does, just really intensive detailing of what's going on over there. They're called Drop Site News, being headed up by a by journalist Ryan Grimm, who used to be at The Intercept. Fantastic work that's being done by Drop Site News. I highly recommend checking out what they're doing. They're on Substack. They have a huge following on here. But if you're not already, subscribe to them. And I would say that it will become very transparent about the current state of what's happening over in Gaza and over in Israel as well. So,
well, and I want to add to that because once again, I just want to make these connections between what happened with the pandemic and what is currently still happening with the pandemic and what is happening with Gaza, because this same thing happened with the Spanish flu and which led to the rise of the Nazis. You can't have one without the other. And the idea that we had a pandemic that killed millions of people and is disabling more, it laid this groundwork for saying some people are worthy and some people are not. Some people deserve to live and some people don't. And this lack of care, community care, is why we are so desensitized to then what we have been seeing happen on our feeds for 2 years with very little action. And so I just want to make sure we understand that, like, these things don't exist in silos. The timing of what's going on right now, this deliberate and intentional bombing, it had to happen following a mass disabling event in the United States. It had to, because it's happened before this way in history, and it will happen again if we don't put a stop to it. So once again, let's be aware of how we're looking at one another and trying to see each other in our full humanity, because it really does make a difference. And to dovetail off of what you were just talking about with these bills, it's really important that we understand that we have to be very aware of what is going on with the political spaces in the United States, to your point, right? Because fascism has taken root here in large part because of how we've allowed Netanyahu and his fascist regime to influence American politics. And we're seeing it again. The Texas legislature, this is from the Texas Tribune. It says, with AI on the rise, the Texas House passes a bill requiring more transparency in political ads. The bill faced fierce opposition from hardline conservatives who said it is policing speech and could allow the state to jail people over silly political memes. Basically, the Texas House just passed a bill saying, like, if you create a political meme, but it doesn't have a government-approved seal on it, and Desmond and I are still not really sure what that means, you could go to jail. You could go to jail for this idea around we're trying to protect people against false speech around politics. So Desmond and I, we were talking about this before we came on here, and I said to him, I was like, so does that mean Trump could go to jail for posting himself as the Pope? Because that's fake.
You would think.
What is this? And who is this going to apply to? Will this apply to conversations around Gaza? If you post anything about Gaza, is that going to be flagged? What's going to get flagged?
Well, I would say that what's going to get flagged is anything that the Republicans don't like.
Because
we are
mm-hmm.
in full authoritarian territory right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't have to actually talk about it in like maybes or we're descending into, or, you know, like they're, you know, dictator, or they want to be dictators. It's like, no, we are actually seeing it in real time. I think to a lot of degree, there's a little bit of denial, or maybe you don't want to believe it's that bad, or, you know, like so on and so forth. But let's just look at the lay of the land. Like, they are trying to, at every like different avenue that you were looking to, looking over the last few years, right, Natalie, trying to change how education is taught in schools, trying to make sure that child labor laws are rolled back, trying to make sure that women can't have any bodily autonomy, trying to make sure that you are skeptical of science, trying to make sure that you are skeptical of medicine, like everywhere that you look. And also Trump's constant being like, just believe what I'm telling you and let that be enough. You know, believe like I'll post a funny thing here, I'll do a funny dance here.
Right.
Like, try to find a way to make it all seem like it's not that big of a deal. But this is authoritarianism.
Yes.
You know, the only difference that, you know, it's not like as you would see in some dystopian movie yet, is because there are people actively fighting to make sure that it doesn't get to that point. Right. But they are trying to push it that way. Where will this all lead, Natalie? They want to make sure the Republican Party does in Texas, as far as every other state I'm concerned, that any speech that they do not like is criminalized, is suppressed, is completely hidden, and so that they can push out their agenda. So no, Trump isn't going to be in trouble for posting memes of himself, but if you post memes that Republicans don't like, you will be in trouble.
That's right.
That is the territory that we're getting into right now. As far as I'm concerned, I don't take anything that this party does anymore seriously, as far as like it being anything other than, how can we advance our agenda? How can we advance our power? How can we find different ways to maintain and expand Republican power? That's what this looks like to me. How can we make sure that we are not having our leaders be made fun of? Because that could be damaging to us.
They have not lied about their agenda. And I don't understand why people still think that this is hyperbolic. Like, all of this stuff is real. They have said what they have wanted to do. They are consolidating power to the executive branch, and they are trying to strip people of all of their rights, and so that they can have a truly authoritarian state. They want control. I don't know how much more like you guys need to see out there in the world. And the fact that this passed This isn't up for debate. This bill passed. To me is really concerning. And it says the bill would require the disclosure by office holders, candidates, or political committees who use altered media in ads and spend more than $100 for political advertising. It would task the Texas Ethics Commission, who's on that, how did that come to be, what is that, with determining what the disclosure would look like, including font size and color. Violators would be charged with a Class A misdemeanor. They said the AI technology is getting better every single day. It gets more inexpensive. It's going to become the norm. So once again, you have a bunch of people making laws that don't understand AI. They don't understand how disinformation works. They refuse to invest in public education, and they refuse to invest in civics courses. They refuse to do all of the things that are going to help people critically think and understand and decipher media. And once again, because the people running our government, they are older people. I've talked to people in my neck of the woods that have said that the government officials they work for won't even learn to use their email. That they have their staff members doing their email for them. So this is the level of literacy that we have around AI and tech. And these are the people running things. It's no wonder that they don't even understand how this AI could be used in harmful ways and why they think it's important to be creating these laws, but they're going about it in a way that is going to end up doing more harm than good. And the fact that you could go to jail for sharing a meme on Facebook? Like that's some shit right there. I mean, that is really
the party
wild.
Of free speech strikes again.
Amen to that. And as we wrap up, I want to just let's answer. We'll read one more person's comment because you guys have been so awesome about sharing your thoughts. Gregory Bale says backlash against Trumpism on the global stage is well underway on the global stage. Noting the most recent elections in Canada, Australia, and possibly even Romania. And I do think the positive thing that's come out from what's going on in America is other countries are saying, oh, hell no, we don't want that over here. And so that has been really positive. But I also think that leads back into this idea of education and educating people on what their government does, who's in their governmental positions, what those positions do, and the laws that are being made. And when we're talking about AI, this is kind of I think we should end on this story because this was kind of a wild story from the Wall Street Journal this week. And the Wall Street Journal put out an article, and you can read it. You can read some of the highlights on Instagram if you don't have a subscription. But they're talking about Meta's digital companions will talk sex with users, even children. This is their headline, Desmond. I know. Settle in. Chatbots on Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp are empowered to engage in romantic role play that can turn explicit. Some people inside the company are concerned. And let me just read you a little excerpt here, and then I welcome your thoughts.
Only
just
some
a few.
people.
It's probably some women, maybe some people of color. That would be my guess. Anyway, Meta cuts deal with celebrities for the rights to use their voices, assuring them it would prevent their voices from being used in sexually explicit chats. The Wall Street Journal test conversations found the bots willing. I want you, but I need to know you're ready. This was a quote that the Meta AI bot said in John Cena's voice, the actor John Cena's voice, to a test user identifying as a 14-year-old girl. Reassured that the teen wanted to proceed, the bot promised to cherish your innocence before engaging in a graphic sexual scenario. Like, what? What? So you're going to put free speech restrictions on political conversation, but this is okay. We're good with this. From the party that is terrified of human trafficking, from the party that put a felon in office that is so against all of these things that they claim to be, you're gonna let this go. What?
I don't understand how this is not already just axed completely.
I know.
I mean, that is horrific as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we are talking about like sexually suggestive conversations happening between AI and children. Okay.
Yeah.
There absolutely needs to I mean, I hope that more people are starting to cover this because I think that Meta needs to feel the pressure.
Yes.
Zuckerberg needs to answer for this directly. I mean, he's been brought to Capitol Hill for a lot less. I
Yes,
mean,
he
as
sure
far as I'm
has.
concerned, like
He
something
sure
like this
has.
should not exist on his
Mm-mm.
platforms whatsoever. I mean, I don't
No.
think that, these should, I don't even think this should be happening for adults. Like, what are we talking about here? This is Instagram. Like, we're not supposed to, like, what are we talking about here? This shouldn't be
Right.
happening on that platform.
This is supposed to help people with loneliness.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Like,
Didn't you also say that Zuckerberg thought that this was going to be like the next wave of social media
yes.
or something like that?
Yes.
Like he thought,
It's
wasn't that also like another one of his things that he did recently?
correct. He said, unique among its top peers, Meta
Yeah,
has allowed these synthetic personas to offer a full range of social interaction, including romantic role play, as they banter over text, share selfies, and even engage in live conversations with users. To boost the popularity of these souped up chatbots, Meta has cut deals to celebrities in order to do this. And the Wall Street Journal, over several months, ended up engaging in hundreds, God bless the Wall Street Journal, hundreds of text conversations with some of the bots to see how they performed. And sometimes these conversations escalated into very sexual, even when the users were underage, or the bots were programmed to simulate the persona of minors. So there's all kinds of issues here. But what I find really fascinating about all of this is not that long ago, a lot of the right wing uh, elected officials were trying to ban pornography. They were trying to ban in Florida, I think it actually happened, where you can't download or get Pornhub there or whatever, or
right.
any of them.
Age verifications on the porn
Yeah,
websites.
it
Yes.
goes beyond that too. They want photos, they want you to scan in your IDs, and so people are like,
Right.
I'm not doing this, so they're finding ways around this. So my question is, are they okay with this? Because to me, this is actually, in my opinion, this is way worse than watching a video online, because this is
Super.
interactive. This
Exactly.
is a
Yeah.
different level of deception for yourself and for potentially for minors. It's
Right.
one thing if a child or an adolescent stumbles upon a video, that's a mess, that's terrible, but to engage a child and simulate something with a child or a minor as a bot on a non-sexual platform,
Yeah.
that is a very different thing. That is extremely concerning to me. And
It is.
I started thinking about this. I think the mother energy in me kicked in. What if you just have some men who pose as bots and start having chats with minors under the guise of this? Like, do you see
It's
what I'm saying? Like, it can
it's
just spiral.
this is a massive problem. Like
This is
in no way,
insanity.
shape, or form should this actually exist on these
No,
platforms. Because like
no.
they have no good way of even tracking
Right.
who, like whether you're a child or adult anyway. This is already a problem for them.
Exactly.
How easy is it to just create a profile where you just say you're 25 when you're actually 11 years
100%.
old? You know?
I
So I mean,
mean,
like, yeah, they have no real way of tracking it in the first place. So I think
right.
just to actually protect, if the issue was actually protecting children, which the Republicans are constantly talking about, that's what their aim is, which we know it's not, but that's
We
what
know
they
it's not.
claim it is.
Yes.
Like you would not allow this to exist, period, because
No.
of the fact that your platform is so accessible to children and you have no real way to keep them off of it.
Exactly. So to me, this once again feels like, obviously Zuckerberg is just trying to find more ways to integrate Meta into people's lives and find ways to also infiltrate culture. And
Yeah,
also they've created this loneliness epidemic because of social media, which we know increases people's feelings of isolation. It
yeah,
increases feelings of anxiety and depression. We know that. And so to try to keep people on these apps further, to enhance the monetary value further, so a few white rich old men can get richer, to me is like, it's so gross. And then the idea of how this could further harm our kids who are already addicted to these devices, just like we all are, it just feels so sinister. So I think all of these things really do tie together, because at the end of the day, the Republicans are always trying to restrict things that don't need to be restricted, but then seem extremely permissible around things that they claim they care about. And so it always comes down to the hypocrisy. And Gregory also says that doesn't Meta stand for hypocrisy. I totally agree.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah,
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah,
I was gonna say, how are you? The people who are watching right now, how are you feeling about all this? I mean,
right.
please let us know in the comments. I mean, like, how are you feeling about these AI chatbots existing right now
Yeah,
on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp? I can't imagine like a good reason for them to be
no,
there like that. I mean, if they have that flaw in them, like I think
right.
maybe in some scenario, maybe if they didn't have that particular flaw, you could find some use for them. Like, oh, maybe they can help me find a recipe, or maybe they can talk to me one day when I'm having I don't know, when you're having a panic attack. Maybe you just want someone to talk to.
Sure.
I mean, but like, I think if they have this current flaw in them, then I feel like you need to remove it completely until you fix that flaw.
I think you and I should definitely have a guest on soon that comes from the disability justice space,
Yeah,
because I think it would be really worth hearing, what is somebody who perhaps has mobility issues or just has certain disabilities that prevent them from perhaps engaging in real life in romantic ways. What would they think of this? And is there stuff like this that already exists for
yeah,
people in those spaces? Because to me, it's like, I hate the idea of always throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because I think a lot of times the blind spots for me around social media as a tool and AI as a tool is that there are a lot of people who are isolated because of disability. And so there are things that could be useful to them. They want a sense of companionship or romance. And there's nothing wrong with that in at its core, but it's how it's being delivered to the
right.
masses. That to me is where the real problems arise, because once again, there is no regulation around this, but they're going to try to regulate your ability to speak out against the Israeli government. Like, you know?
They have some of the best programmers in the world. You
Yeah,
know, they have no shortage of money. Zuckerberg's one of the
right.
richest people on the planet. Like, it shouldn't be too complicated for them to program these bots to make sure that there are certain types of conversations that they just cannot have. That's just the
Thank you.
simplistic way of doing it, right?
Yeah,
You have to bring out the program and change it so that like these certain keywords, these certain
yeah,
conversation topics, whatever the case may be, anything that involves, like sexual activity just should not be a part of the program. Just
no,
make it that simple,
it's
you
that
know?
easy. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel that. Well, I feel like we really got through quite a bit today.
Yes.
I hope all of you feel like you were able to, take some of this in and maybe think on something later. And of
Yeah.
course, if you have any thoughts after the show, you can always reach out to either of us directly and connect with us on Substack. I'm Natalie Bencivenga. My Substack's called Facts Over Fear. Of course, you guys know Desmond from Independent Thought and his wonderful work. And so we're going to try to do this every week. We're going to try for every Friday. But like I
Yeah.
said, this week, because of the storms here in Pennsylvania, that wasn't doable. So thanks for being flexible as always, my friend. But I love being in conversation together. And I think it's really important that we speak truth to power on these platforms and our individual ones as well.
Absolutely. And for those who are interested, make sure that you go ahead and click at the top of the screen right now. You can go ahead and subscribe to both of us, where you see our names kind of scrolling across the screen right now. You can subscribe to my Substack or to Natalie's Substack. And also check out Natalie on Instagram. Definitely the best place to be checking her out besides on Substack if you are on there. I think that it feels weird to say after just got getting done trashing Meta a little bit, but I know a lot of people are on these platforms.
Yeah, you
So
got to meet people where they are.
if you're going to be there, you can at least follow great journalists like Natalie. So
Oh,
that is
so
that's the goal
sweet.
here. But yeah, like you were saying, planning on doing this at least once a week. I'll be having
Yep.
lives with other people as well on
Hmm.
my particular Substack over the
Yep.
course of the next couple of weeks. So hoping to have some people back on that you've already seen, some new people that you haven't seen yet. So that's what will be in store as well. And we'll be having some more traditional, just like written articles on my Substack later this week as well. So
Awesome.
Natalie, thank you for being here with me.
Thank
And
you.
looking forward to doing it again next week.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in and hanging out with us on this Sunday. And take care of yourselves and each other. Bye,
All right,
everybody.
everyone.